What's up, everybody? It's another edition of the First and Orange podcast. Parker Gabriel here, Ryan McFadden over there, your friendly neighborhood Denver Post Broncos beat reporters. Coming to you Thursday morning, October 10th. Ryan, somehow it's already week 6 of the NFL season, more than a quarter of the way through. And the Broncos are 3-2. They've reeled off 3 straight wins. They knocked off the Raiders 34-18, ended that long losing streak. Got sort of like God mode performance from Pat Surtain, especially like that game. I think it's easy to forget now, Ryan. That game looked like it might be headed off the rails. Like 10-3, it's first and goal from the 5. The Raiders have the ball going in, maybe to make it 17-3, take all the air out of the building on sort of like a celebratory weekend. Instead, obviously, Pat 100-yard pick 6, tie game, the onslaught from there. What were you thinking watching the first part of that game before the pick 6?
One of the things I was thinking about was like, man, how bad would this be if the Raiders beat down the Broncos with Brock Bowers, who they picked right after Denver drafted Bo Nix. And because when you go back to that draft, that was the thing right there. Either the Broncos were going to get a quarterback, or you solved one of the biggest needs on your team and getting a dynamic pass catcher. They went to go get Nix, and the Raiders took Brock Bowers. And in that first quarter, I'm like, oh, man, this is about to look like.
Yeah, he caught a 57-yard touchdown on the first possession he ever played against Denver.
And I'm like, man, it's going to be one of those talking points where like, oh, did the Broncos make a mistake and whatnot? But in the end, they figure out a way, thanks to Pat Surtain on there making that pick 6, because that really changed the momentum. That really changed the momentum of the game, because I feel like if they would have scored there, you're looking at a much different. You're probably looking at a much different game, just because I think at 17-3, I think all the life and any type of momentum the Broncos were trying to gain just got sucked away because of that.
Yeah, no doubt. And the offense really took a long time to get revved up, obviously. And even like at the end of the half, Bo Nix did a good job and hit Troy Franklin for 20 yards over the middle to get him to the fringe of field goal range. But that was that was the first time they really moved the football. And even then, it was a 59-yard field goal that Will Lutz missed, but the 15-yard penalty on the Raiders made it an easier one. They had the lead going into half. So, yeah, it was like it was a little bit dicey early on, but the defense, which, to be fair, like was getting carved up early in the game by Gardner Minshew and the Raiders offense without Javonte Adams, they really sort of strapped in and got it going. And then the offense, kind of kicked into gear a little bit in the second half, beneficiary of great field position. But, you saw the recipe for failure in the first half, AKA the defense doesn't play well. And you saw the recipe for success really in the second half, where defense and special teams do their thing, put the offense in advantageous positions, and then you get enough in that regard. So 3 touchdowns in the second half for Bo Nix, 2 passing, 1 rushing. And now, Ryan, it sets up a pretty interesting game, actually. The Chargers come to Denver on Sunday. They're coming off a bye week, an early bye week, but it did get Justin Herbert a week of rest on that ankle injury. And this is sort of it's an early litmus test about sort of the rest of the division behind Kansas City, which obviously they're 5-0. So what do you think? This has all the makings of a rugged, physical slugfest, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is going to be. I look at this game as where the run game is going to be very important from both sides, especially for Denver. I think it's going to be a huge test for them, because Chargers have been one of the better run defenses in National Football League so far this year. So, all right, will Javonte Williams? Are the Javonte Williams we saw the last 2 games, is that going to be the Javonte Williams we see moving forward? I think this game could be that test, and that's going to be the key there. I think it's going to be a test for Bo Nix as well. You're going against a really strong defense, a really physical team, and I think when you look at how this game is going to be played out, I think it's truly going to be. I think it's going to be low scoring. And I think it's going to be dictated about how well Denver moves the ball in terms of in the run game, and Special teams. I think special teams going to play a part there. When you look back at that Raiders game, there was like you had a Trayman Smith 38-yard kick return, the Marvin Mims punt return. I believe that was for 38 yards as well. To help put the team in solid field position, and you're going to need that on Sunday. So I'm looking at low scoring, physical, a lot heavy run offense on both sides. So yeah, it's gonna be. It won't be a pretty fun. I want to say it's gonna be a fun watch on Sunday.
Yeah, it could be ugly, but it's it also like just the way that the Chargers have run the ball so far, and obviously they've been like one of the storylines in the game is to sort of like continue with the not so sexy picture is one of the major storylines is just the health of the offensive line both ways. The Chargers have been without Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. Slater's practiced a little bit so far this week. And then the Broncos are dealing with injuries of their own. They've got, that Luke Wattenberg dropped out, about 10 snaps left. Alex Palczewski, obviously already the backup right tackle, injured his ankle and went out too. Not exactly the most surprising thing of the week, but yesterday Sean Payton wouldn't say, what the status of those guys going forward would be. Neither of them practiced yesterday. So you could end up in a situation on Sunday where you're playing your number 2 center and your number 3, basically, right tackle. During the game that was Alex Forsyth at center, Matt Parrott at right tackle. Although, then Garrett Bowles missed one snap during the game, and so Parrott flipped to the left, and Frank Crum was in on the right, and so it was sort of a convoluted picture up front for Denver against the Raiders. They used 4 different offensive line combinations in the game, so that obviously bears watching, and it's one of those things where Sean Payton talks a lot about they want to paint the right picture for Bo Nix, and everybody else does their job. That gets a lot harder to do if the unit that you're banking on to sort of be the engine of your offense and your offensive line is a turnstile in terms of like who's in and who's not. And so obviously, like, you can't always control injuries. Guys play through a lot. Garrett Bowles is beat up, but he's playing. It just is one of those things where it's like, if you're looking, not to be like Debbie Downer, but like if you're looking for reasons to be a little bit concerned, that would be it. What is the offensive line picture going to look like, and how much more attrition, if any, can they withstand and keep playing at least like a functional level?
Yeah, especially the way, because that's when you look at this during this 3-game win streak, that's been the key for this team is protecting Bo Nix, not creating a lot of pressure. When you looked at those first 2 games, he was dealing with a ton of pressure at the time. He wasn't getting sacked a lot, but he was dealing with a lot of pressure. And when he was dealing with that pressure, that's when you saw the mistakes happen. That's when you saw all the inaccurate passes, the interceptions, him trying to do too much. And these last 3 games is like, you got to credit that offensive line for doing their thing and providing solid protection for Nix, and then creating lanes and for the running backs to take advantage of. And like you said, if they struggle with that, if you have a revolving door offensive line, then that kind of hurts not only Nix's development moving forward, but kind of like changes like the narrative of your season a bit. So you hope that like the guys they have are able to step in and provide and be stable. And Garrett Bowles can continue fighting out there. We saw him duck out last week. He's been banged, like you said, been banged up. So yeah, that's probably the worst. That's probably for giving the Broncos on what they like to do. That's probably the worst area to have just a bunch of moving pieces and injuries on your roster.
No doubt. And it's been pretty notable, Ryan, like you say. I mean, they've really, ever since the start of the season, Bo Nix had the 49 dropbacks in week 1 against Seattle, and then 39 in week 2, 39 in week 3. The last 2 weeks has been 27 and 31. So a big drop. Obviously it depends on how many plays you get in a game. The weather in against the Jets had an impact, but the last 2 weeks you've seen a little bit more of I think what they'd like to be in terms of balance, run pass balance. And then also, Bo's been pressured 19 times total in the last 3 games after 14 in week 2 and 18 in week 1. So they've done, like you say, they've done a better job of protecting him. They had 3 sacks last week against the Raiders. Some of that is the Max Crosby factor. But it's going to be that they really, I think they need to be able to run the football. The Chargers are going to be committed to running the football. And so that's one of the things they have to do. And it just is a question of, how efficiently can they do that? And can they keep, I think, you sort of made mention of this earlier, can they keep Javonte Williams sort of like revving up as he's been the last couple of weeks? It's been impressive to see him. And it hasn't been like completely eye-popping numbers or anything, but the eye test suggests, Ryan, that the Javonte of old, or at least something close to it, has been back the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, most definitely. He has looked very good. He has looked really, really good over these last 2 games. And yeah, he's not rushing for 150 yards or something like that, or 120 yards and 5 touchdowns. But the way he's moving, the way he's been able to generate yards after contact, I think that's all been key in terms of, like, you're trying to see progress, and that's what we've seen. I think that's been the key. You have to have progress, like from where he was a few weeks ago when he was putting up 12 and 17 yards rushing yards a game, to now we're at like 70, like where he had 77 one game, I believe, like 60 something against the Raiders. Yeah, that's a step forward to me. You're going to need that. You're going to need that, and also too what he does in the passing game, where he's been a reliable check down target for Bo Nix. You're going to need that from your offense, especially when you're not getting a ton of production from your guys on the perimeter, your wide receivers and your tight ends. So you're going to need Javonte Williams to keep looking like this. Hopefully he can keep stacking those days, and at some point we do see him break loose for 100 yards in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I just thought the way he finished runs, he put his shoulder down and let a couple of guys have it at the end of runs against the Raiders. And then one of the things that goes underappreciated about Javonte is he's really good in pass protection. I mean, he's not like a traditional third down back, but he steps up and he will thump a linebacker. So that's the kind of stuff that, like, goes underappreciated. And that's probably in part why he kept the role early in the season that he had, even though the production wasn't coming on the ground. So now that you start to see the run production tick back up, like if they can keep that headed in the right direction, maybe they have something there on the ground. It's going to be interesting too, Ryan. Like, this goes a little bit hand in hand, before we talk about the defense, hand in hand with the questions on the offensive line. Are either of those guys, Paul Chesky or Wattenberg, going to end up on short-term injured reserve? We saw 2 players back at practice yesterday. It doesn't guarantee that they'll be activated for Sunday. The Broncos have 3 weeks. But a couple of guys who have been on short-term IR have started practicing again. And so that always means, and then I think they were full participants too. So that means that they're getting close to being ready to play. One being Damari Mathis, who they put on injured reserve right at the roster cutdown back in the summer. And the other being Audric Estime, the rookie running back. So it's interesting because Sean Payton has talked quite a bit about, he's not used to a 3 running back rotation in a game, but they could also use the burst that we saw in a very small sample from Audric Estime in week 1 before he had the ankle sprain. So I'm curious, Ryan, whether it's this week or maybe it's next Thursday in New Orleans, or maybe after that, but like, it could be as soon as this weekend that Audric Estime is back in there. So when he is, what does that look like for Denver? Does he go right back to just sort of being the third guy and he gets a couple carries and maybe a target per game? Or do they try to work him in a more substantial way?
I think you have to work him in a more substantial way. Because he's shown, whether you saw it in practice, you see it in preseason, and just in a small glimpse against Seattle, what he can, like, that burst he has. And how, and he's just he's one of those, like, when you talk about Javonte Williams being a violent runner, that's who he is. It's like it's like a freight train going down the field when you see him running. And you need that. You need that. He's a younger guy. He's strong. You've seen that burst. You've seen that speed. I would try to figure out to incorporate him some way, because at the same time we're hoping this is the Javonte Williams continues to trend upward. if we started to see a decline in his production, then you're going to have to you still have to reevaluate things. I think the next step is Aldrich Estime. So yeah, I also I think he can be a solid guy in the red zone. When Sean Payton talks about continue to improve on red zone production, they've been solid. So they've been improving in that area. But I think someone like Aldrich Estime can really help take their red zone offense to another level, just given the skill set he provides. So you will hope he doesn't kind of get that rookie treatment. You hope that Aldrich is someone they can incorporate more into the offense, where it's not just, we put him in on third down, or we just give him let's say if it's a fourth and inch situation, we bring him in to try to push through for a first down. I would love to see someone like Estime get incorporated into the offense more, get a little bit more involved, and see what he can provide, because I think he's a very talented player.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you would have said put him back in there and give him 15 carries, right? And now Javonte's sort of, revved up a little bit. And so it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. It could be, like I say, it could be as soon as this weekend. They could activate him, at any point. Usually they do that, right before whatever game the guy's coming back in. So we may not know more about that until Friday, possibly Saturday, whether either he or Damari Mathis is back this week, or if they bump it down the road another week. Ryan, I mean, Mathis, whenever they activate him, he just sort of jumps back into a secondary. First of all, it's unclear to me exactly how that's going to work. They're going to need a roster spot. Maybe it's Levi Wallace, maybe it's Keydron Smith. Maybe they just wait through this week and see, if they come out of another game against the Chargers fully healthy on the back end. But either way, the defense has just played terrific all season. Was a little bit of a question what it was going to look like for the first quarter plus against the Raiders, but they've just been really good. And you wrote earlier this week about Riley Moss. He's been a key. There's been a lot of keys, but he's been one. His ability to hold up on the other side of the field from Pat Surtain. He's playing a lot of different stuff. And he got his first pick on Sunday, and he's sort of been one of these stories so far for this defense about a group of guys that you thought they had a chance to be good. But I don't know that anybody saw this level of production overall from this defense coming.
Yeah, I didn't expect it either. That's because if I did, I probably would have changed my record prediction a little bit, just given that they're playing lifestyle football. And I think it's kind of, I would say it's kind of inspiring too what they've been able to do. Pat Surtain, but everyone else, like Dan Joseph mentioned, these are guys that have been that spent the early parts of their career proving that they belong, proving that they can be quality pieces to a defense, and they've shown it. It's not like Vance Joseph is working with like a Von Miller in his prime back when he was here, or the no-fly zone defense when they were wreaking havoc in NFL. These are guys who they saw something last year in practices. They saw something in training camp that made them believe, all right, we can compete with these guys, and they've gone above and beyond. And like I said, part of it is what they've been able to do from a talent perspective, and to me, is coaching and putting it and coach them and put them in the best position for them to succeed. And to me, Riley Moss is not only one of the biggest stories for the Broncos, I would say probably in the NFL in general, because we didn't know, he barely played last year. So we went into the year not knowing what to expect. There was nothing to go off of to say, hey, this guy can be, we think this guy can be good. Hey, this guy can be bad. We just did not know. And he's been playing some really solid football. And you saw the type of play he made for that interception against the Raiders, a very athletic play. That's what we saw back when if you watched him playing in Iowa, that's what he did. Someone who could just, he has that speed to just, maintain solid coverage and man and not let go of his defender. And that's what he did, and leaped up and made a pick. And to have him, and already know, and to me, I think Pat Surtain, I don't know how he's been able to do it, but he has elevated his game has elevated his game. We're talking about last year, he was one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He gets a new contract, and it's just, I felt like his play just skyrocketed with a new deal. And something some players are able to do that. Some kind of have a hard time dealing with that pressure. He has not dealt with none of that pressure that comes with, being a first-year captain, being one of the highest paid defensive backs in NFL history. It's like been a source of motivation. I guess maybe it feels like a source of motivation for him because he's playing some lights out football. So to have those two play the way they have has been key, because the Broncos have been one of the better pass rushing teams in the league, which is night and day from what we saw last year. And I think the key of that has been what the guys that on the back end have been doing, because even if the quarterbacks we've seen there's been games, even when the quarterback has had time, they are still holding on to that ball because they can't find no one down the field. So next thing you know, Zach Allen comes in to force an incompletion or generate a sack, or Nick Benito comes in flying to take down the quarterback because they just don't have time and they have nowhere to go. So that's been creating those opportunities for the guys up front to just wreak havoc on a quarterback.
Yeah, when you don't have weak links, I mean, on defense especially, when you don't have weak links, it's one of the oldest football adages, but it really is true, right? Like, rush helps coverage, coverage helps rush. And that's really the way it's been for the Broncos so far this year. Like, they are capable of getting home with 4. They've blitzed a lot. They've created a lot of pressure, both, 4-man and when they bring extra guys. But in the event that they don't, the coverage is held up on the back end. And then, the coverage has benefited by the fact that they're getting quick pressure, at times too. So it all works hand in hand defensively. It always does. One of the things I think is really sort of unique about Denver's secondary, and actually that I'm writing about for this weekend, is just the way that the 5 pieces work together, right? Like, you have a superstar in Pat Surtain, no doubt about it. One of the best defensive players in the NFL, and a chess piece that you can use any way you want. But you can't use that chess piece any way you want if the other guys can't handle a lot of stuff. And so, like, one of the things that I think the Broncos coaches have been impressed with, and one of the things that's really fun to watch, is the ability of Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan, who, by the way, like Jaquan, there's been a lot of talk about Pat and Riley so far this year, but Jaquan has just continued, what he did sort of in his breakout year last year. He's playing great. He hasn't made the eye-popping big plays, the turnover plays so far, but the coaches and his teammates just rave about the way he's played so far this season. And then you've got a really interesting safety pair in Brandon Jones and PJ Locke that they played together in college. They're both guys that have been doubted about whether they can, be down in and down out safeties in the NFL, but they really play well off of each other. And they have this unique style of play where they're both, neither of them are just top end, ball hawks or, from a physical standpoint or whatever, but they're both sort of like generalists. Like, they can do a little bit of everything, and it allows them to play sides rather than, like when it was Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson, very effective safety pair. You knew that Justin, more often than not, they wanted him in center field playing coverage. And you knew more often than not that they wanted to protect Kareem from those situations and play him in the box. This is just a different style altogether, year over year, where PJ and Brandon can just play left and right. They don't even call themselves, free and strong on any given play. And it just allows them to disguise. It simplifies their communication because it's, side and side rather than, oh, we got to rotate this way or make sure, X, Y, and Z. So it just it's a really fascinating picture on the back end. And the way that Vance Joseph and Jim Leonard have put that puzzle together clearly has worked over the first 5 weeks. They're going to be tested a lot, obviously, in this stretch coming up, but it's been a really interesting group to watch. And it's a group that obviously is playing at a really high level. And now a group that's going to have to prove that they can tackle this week against the Chargers.
Oh yeah, that's going to be key right there. Is you can't miss a ton of tackles against the Chargers, especially when they're running downhill.
Yeah, it's and they haven't. There was a couple. They missed a couple last week early on against the Raiders, but overall this has been a good tackling group so far too. Just it's been solid all around. That's why they're in the top 5 in pretty much every category defensively overall. Okay, Ryan, 3 in a row. You've been on fire with the picks recently. This is a tough one. Broncos currently, I think it's not by a big margin, but they're home underdogs against the Chargers and and Jim Harbaugh this week. So before we go, we got to get predictions in. What say you? 4 in a row for the Broncos, or does the winning streak end here?
I think the winning streak continues, and the Broncos beat the Chargers 13-10. I think it's gonna be a low scoring matchup. Don't expect I won't expect a ton from Bo Nix, but I think the offense it won't be great, but I think they're gonna make enough plays to put themselves in scoring position. I think this is gonna be a game where you're gonna rely heavily on Will Lutz. So I'm going 13-10 Broncos, and the key is like I think the key will be is Bo Nix cannot commit. He's done a good job so far in terms of not committing turnovers. He has to keep that up because Justin Herbert is not a guy that's gonna put the ball in Homer's weight a lot. He only has 1 interception this year, so it's hard to. You're not gonna. It's pretty hard to win the turnover battle against someone like Justin Herbert. So it's going to be the key right there. If Bo Nix can protect the ball, make a few plays here and there, they can get some run production from Javonte Williams and just get himself into scoring position. I think they should be able to pull off the win. I just like the way the defense has been playing. That's the key for me. And when I make it, it's just like the defense has been. It's been hard to root against them. It's been hard to bet against them because that's how well they've been playing. I think that's going to continue. So I'm going 13-10 Broncos. And I think they're going to need a field goal somewhere from Will Lutz late in the game.
Yeah, I mean the Chargers, they started off pretty well offensively. 22 points against the Raiders, 26 against the Panthers. Not exactly murderer's row of opponents there, but they scored only 10 points in the 2 games before the bye week. Each of their 2 games before the bye week against Pittsburgh and against Kansas City. Obviously, 2 much better defenses. I'm going to be really interested. It's a little bit hard to tell where the Chargers are going to be health-wise. They have 16 guys on their injury report on the first day coming out of a bye week. And, that includes any player you could come up with, Ryan, from the Chargers, basically, is probably on this injury report. Justin Herbert, Khalil Mack, Rashawn Slater, Derwin James, Hayden Hurst, all of these guys have been each of their starting 2 tackles. They've just been banged up early in the year. So coming off a bye week, you would think that Herbert's ankle maybe is in a little bit better shape and all of that. My default position here is to pick the Chargers. I just think they're built to play a style of football that's tough to handle. But I also, Broncos have won 3 in a row. Sean Payton, he's said multiple times now the past couple of weeks, Ryan, it's starting to go good when he breaks out the fine line between a groove and a rut. And now he said that 2 weeks in a row. So to me, that's the signal that, that they're maybe closer to the groove than he likes to let on. And so I don't know. All the signals to me say Chargers, low scoring and close, but Broncos have won 3 in a row. So let's go, maybe not against the grain generally, but against the grain of my brain. And I'll take the Broncos too. 17-13, same kind of game, low scoring, physical slugfest. But this is the type of game that if the Broncos get this one, not only are they in good shape at 4-2, but it almost has to be. I mean, you could be surprised, but it's a type of game that if you can win this way, then usually you can win in different ways in the NFL. So we're both picking the Broncos. That undoubtedly sets them up for failure, but we'll see how it goes. It should be a good one. And then it's a quick turnaround to the big Sean Payton reunion in New Orleans next Thursday. So that will affect our podcast schedule next week. Now that I think about it, we'll have to figure that one out. But for now, enjoy the winning streak, Broncos fans. They go for 4 in a row Sunday against the Chargers. That's Ryan. I'm Parker. This is the First and Orange Podcast. Find everything that we write and produce, denverpost.com/Broncos. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.